When we think of this area and the Civil War, I think most folks will think of the significant battles that we have in this area. My perception is that these two battles are similar in form to what we read about in the books. You know,
the classic Napoleonic,
the classic
yeah.
big army against army. I'm wondering if we could, start with Pea Ridge and then make our way to Prairie Grove, and then in between is something that's much less known, a battle at a place called Maysville, just right close to the Missouri border in the northwest corner of Arkansas. So when we think of the significant battle at Pea Ridge, then, or what is significant about it, what is the significance of the Battle of Pea Ridge, if you could just tell us that story real quick.
Yeah, this goes back to an interstate aspect. Nothing. Those guys didn't just decide, flip a coin. Let's end up at Pea Ridge.
Sure.
A week from Saturday, and we'll have a go at this.
Yeah.
This started with you mentioned April of 1861 and all. Missouri was going through a very tumultuous time politically. The sitting legislature, governor, attorney general, prominent citizens were literally run out of Jefferson City at gunpoint.
In Missouri?
In Missouri, by the United States Army, with the president's full authority. No manner, shape, or form was there any legality involved here. This was politics. This was north-south. This was some people who had positions of power that never should have been given positions of power. But that said, they ran them out of Missouri.
Now, they were run out of Missouri because they were identified as being Southern
pro-Southern, yeah, pro-Southern.
Okay.
There was a massacre called the Fort Jackson, or the Camp Jackson Massacre, which was the legal, by law, the state had this militia. And by law, they met at a certain time, so many days, and they were in St. Louis meeting at this time. Now, there's a lot of mumbo-jumbo going on here. Clearly, these guys wanted secession. This was along the Missouri River, clearly Southern, more so than we are here. But still, at that point, they had done everything by the book. American flag flying. They had done nothing irregular. And to keep the St. Louis Arsenal from being captured, a guy named Nathaniel Lyon, which was a psychopath, had political connections going all the way to Lincoln. When Lincoln was, you've probably read about Lincoln's trip to his inaugural, how he had no security detail. One of a gentleman named James Lane, who was a senator from Kansas, a real volatile fellow, provided the security for him. Well, Lane was one of the instrumental players in Kansas who had contacts in Missouri, and they kind of used those contacts and Lincoln's friendship for providing security for him. He kind of, they had an open door to his office. So when all this happened, they've just used the idea, well, these are pro-Southern.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Doesn't matter that until you have something that changes, it's still the legally elected government of the state of Missouri, which was run out at gunpoint by the United States Army.
And this is 1861?
Yeah. Which on July the 5th led to the Battle of Carthage, which was the Missouri State Guard, militia, whatever you'd like to call them, and the United States Army. And this was led by General Franz Sigel, who was German. Didn't speak really good English. A lot of his men were German from St. Louis, did not speak much English at all, and were really seen as invaders into the area, which is another classic insurgent action. You don't have to be taken over from a country outside. You can just, it's a different person coming in and trying to take over your little part of the world.
Yeah.
And these guys were seen as real problems. So they had, July 5th, they had the battle at Carthage.
Now, Carthage, so it's U.S. forces against the Missouri militia?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And General Sterling Price, who was part of all of this as well, left before the battle on the 5th and made contact with Ben McCullough, who was camped in the Maysville area, just slightly east of Maysville. The campground still exists and all that. Massive campground. And he was training the official Confederate Army here. And Sterling Price made contact with him, asked for relief. They set out, and they were about a day too late. By the time they got up there, the Missouri State Militia had already won the day and were still moving south. The entire Missouri legislature ended up at Maysville, where they were for several months the official, duly elected legislature, governor, attorney general, everything for the state of Missouri operating out of Maysville.
Yeah.
The North did not provide. There were no elections. There was not another legislature put in. They just moved the legislature down here to Arkansas, which has always been curious.
Meaning the...
The U.S. Army.
The U.S. Army.
Yeah, to control the state of Missouri. And they did. And after that, Missouri was essentially in a state of civil unrest.
Now, the Carthage, that takes place before or after these officials have been pushed out of power in Missouri?
They're in the process of being pushed out. The Army was chasing them, trying to corral them and catch them. They wanted to catch them before they could make contact with McCullough and the Confederate. They didn't know what kind of Army situation that there was in Arkansas. They only knew that that would be support for them if they could make contact here. And they were trying everything. There were several wings of it that were trying to engulf them, and everything it just didn't work.
Did the Southern victory at Carthage, did that then serve as a wake-up call to get more Union forces to this part of the country?
It polarized, I think, both sides. The people that weren't on one side or the other became polarized and realized that this is, wow, look at that, they killed these, blah, blah, blah.
So even if folks on the east, if they don't think it's significant, folks in this area obviously recognize it as significant.
Yeah. So we have the troops consolidating in camp in Maysville. McCullough, if you look at McCullough's background, he was an Indian fighter. He was a scout for the United States Army during the Mexican War. He was a Texas Ranger. He was one of the really identifiable men of the time. And he was one of the first to be able to successfully, in Texas, fight the Comanche Indian. Before that, nobody could do anything with him. They robbed and pillaged at will.
Yeah.
Well, McCullough trained his cavalry, his personal cavalry guard, which just happened to be a group of guys from Benton County in Arkansas and some leftovers from the Missouri State Guard, trained them in these Indian fighting tactics. And one of the things that the Indians used were they were able to fire multiple arrows at people. While the guys get their one rifle shot, have to reload, tamp it down and prime it and put it in, boom, and 40 more arrows come while he's tamping it, McCullough taught them how to fight from horseback, how to hit quickly. One pistol's not enough. You need 2 on your hips, you need 2 on the saddles, and you need a rifle, and then you need a big knife as well. And if you're going into this, then you go into this. Well, some of the guys that he taught were Youngers, James, all of the guys that would later go on to form the guerrilla works in Missouri got their training in Maysville. The local guys here got their training as well. The Buck Brown guerrillas and all that used McCullough's Indian fighting techniques from Texas to fight here against the United States Army, which still used single-shot rifles for the most part. There was other armament that would eventually, by the end of the war, begin to start working in.
Yeah.
But
this-
that's how that worked. So they were basically getting all this training here
at Maysville.
at Maysville. They got artillery training here. They had captured armament from the Liberty Arsenal and several others where they actually were able to get ordnance. And they did their training here. So after the legislature got down here, Carthage is over, there was kind of a lull from April, from July, from the time that Carthage was over. There was about a month lull.